talking about a topic today that really is dear to my heart, and that is libraries. Before we get going, I want to extend a sincere and massive thanks to our two wonderful teams who are helping me put the series together and have been terrific over many years. That is the team at the Institute for Public Knowledge at NYU and the team at the Digital Technology for Democracy Lab at the University of Virginia. Now, we can think about libraries as archives or even databases if we think really closely about them. They are repositories that safeguard collective memory, institutions that organize and preserve knowledge for future generations. But libraries are also very dynamic spaces where knowledge production occurs in real time and where communities gather and where differences are bridged. Libraries can help foster vital social connections. Now, AI systems have come to mediate social life in similar ways. They impact the breadth and depth of our social connections, and today it is nearly impossible to interact with another individual in the digital world without AI mediation, from email to social media or even to Zoom calls like this one. Access to institutions like education, welfare, potential employers, all of that is AI mediated too. Like libraries, AI systems also play a big role in how we generate knowledge. We can barely open a scientific journal like Nature without reading about how AI has helped produce new scientific findings. And like a library, AI is an epistemic technology, a system that is designed to be used in inquiry, in manipulating and analyzing data and knowledge, and it directly shapes how knowledge is produced and how it is validated. Now, as AI is becoming an active participant in the organization of social life and in our knowledge ecologies, there are a bunch of really urgent questions that emerge. We have to ask, what is the relationship between these two social and epistemic systems? How does it reshape our understanding of access to knowledge, learning, and vital social infrastructure? How can libraries remain egalitarian and inclusive while adapting to new digital tools and platforms? And what does it mean for libraries, sites which are historically committed to openness and democratic access, to coexist with AI systems that may replicate forms of exclusion or bias and that are privately owned? Now, with me today are three thinkers and practitioners who are excellently positioned to help us think through these questions, to consider libraries not just as buildings or collections, but as living nodes in the network of knowledge and community. Please join me in welcoming today Eric Klinenberg, Shauntee Burns-Simpson, and Peter Musser. Today, we will go first, the wonderful Eric Klinenberg. And I told him earlier that I would say this. Eric is both the midwife and godfather of the whole co-opting AI universe. 7 years ago, he took a chance on me when I was new to New York and to NYU. And I had this wild idea of using AI to talk about society. He made a home for me at IPK and allowed me to grow in all the ways. And he nurtured the series into what it is today. Today is our 54th episode, and we do have a partnership with the University of California Press, where we have a new book series called Co-opting AI. So I'm extremely grateful to Eric for everything he has done over many years. Eric has also done pioneering work at the intersection of urban space, public infrastructure, and inequality. He currently is the Helen Gold Shepard Professor of Social Science and the Director of IPK at NYU. He also is a prolific writer. His books include 2020, One City, Seven People, and The Year Everything Changed, which came out last year. He also wrote Palaces for the People, How Social Infrastructure Can Help Fight Inequality, Polarization, and the Decline of Civic Life. He wrote Going Solo, The Extraordinary Rise and Surprising Appeal of Living Alone, Fighting for Air, which is about control over America's media. And he also wrote Heat Wave, A Social Autopsy of Disaster in Chicago. He also does editorial work, for example, as editor of Culture Production in the Digital Age. He co-edited Anti-Democracy in America, and he co-authored with Aziz Ansari the New York Times #1 bestseller, Modern Romance. He is a prolific public scholar as well. He has written for The New Yorker, the New York Times Magazine, Rolling Stone, and has been featured in This American Life. Welcome, Eric. It is an honor and a pleasure to finally have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So much. Following Eric today will be a library and community leader, Shauntee Burns-Simpson, who is the Director of Youth and Family Services at the District of Columbia Public Library and the 2526 President of the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable. She also serves on the boards of the Freedom to Read Foundation and the Public Library Association. Formerly the president of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association and chair of ALA's Committee on Diversity, Shauntee has consistently championed equity, diversity, and inclusion in librarianship. As an ambassador for libraries and youth librarianship, she is dedicated to connecting communities to library resources, supporting at-risk teens, and fostering a lifelong love of reading and learning through innovative and inclusive programming. Welcome, Shauntee. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Closing us out today will be an expert on AI and libraries, Peter Musser. Peter is the head of library services at the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management in Education, short ISKME. He guides policy and collection development for OER Commons, a digital public library of open educational resources. He also works with ISKME's research platform and training teams to better understand socio-technical aspects of topics like generative AI and how they may impact libraries in the communities they serve. Since 23, Peter has served as the chair of the AI and Machine Learning in Libraries Interest Group for ALA Core, a division of the American Library Association. Welcome, Peter. It's so great to have you too. All right. Now it is time for me to cede the stage and the microphone to Eric. Before I do so, dear audience, you know the drill. As we go along in our conversation and sharing of our provocations, please put your questions and comments into the comment box that is at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. I will fold these into the conversation. And with that, I'm going to be quiet and ask Eric to step onto the virtual stage. And big thanks to everybody for being here today.
Great. Well, thank you, Mona, and thanks to all of you for being here. Let me first start by humbly embracing my new gender-bending cyborg identity as godfather, midwife, and first-time participant in the Co-opting AI series. It's been a blast to watch this series take off and generate so much good conversation. I know from my social world and professional community how many people get real value just from being here and listening in or chiming into the conversation. Moni really built a great institution. And I'm thrilled for you. It's just an honor for me to be part of it. And it's so nice to hear about the partnership with the University of California Press and the book series that you'll start to launch. It's perfectly well timed. So thanks. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I guess I want to start by saying that the library and AI cannot, should not be set in opposition to one another. The library as an institution and as a physical place, it has to find a way to incorporate the things that AI is going to do. We cannot find ourselves in a situation where there is a direct conflict between these forces in the world. That said, there is an emerging clash that we need to be aware of and that I am concerned about. And it obviously predates AI. And I guess where the first provocation I'd like to issue is to say that for the last few decades, the world's wealthiest corporations have invested, billions of dollars. I don't know how to count it, and hired many of the world's most talented and highly educated people uh, to figure out how to get more of us to give more of our time and attention to the things happening on our screens. And, this has been a world-changing project. We can think about it in terms of its uh, economic impact, in terms of its, impact on our development, on our minds, on our personalities, on our children, on our culture, on our education system, and the implications of living in a world where so much money and so much talent gets organized to keep us engaged in a screen-based world is massively significant. And it has obviously produced many good things. We saw a lot of the good things emerge during the pandemic when we were forced to lock down and hunker down and did not have access to physical places that we conventionally use to engage one another. And it's hard to imagine what that experience would have been like in so many parts of the world if we didn't have access to all of the affordances we got from, Zoom in the classroom or, FaceTime in our friendships or, Netflix and Apple TV in our entertainment lives. It's just like the fact that there was so much happening on our screens was kind of amazing. Um, and we all have countless things that we appreciate about life on our screens, whether it's, that it's become a great way to meet people if we want to date or to reconnect with people from our old lives or to, participate in communities that are small enough that it could be hard to find other people who share our medical condition or, problem that we want to solve. Or if we just like want a more efficient way to order delivery food in New York City quickly, I mean, the internet and the screens help us to do all those things. But the challenge of this world that we've created and of being in a situation where so much money and so much talent gets organized into the project of keeping us tethered to our devices with our noses close to the metal is that it's been very hard for the analog world to keep up. And I've had a growing concern, which I registered, most clearly and at length in this book, Palaces for the People, that at the same time that we've made this enormous investment in a digital screen-based universe, we have really failed collectively across different societies, across different kinds of governments, to build a compelling physical world that makes face-to-face interaction with other human beings uh, as inviting and compelling as it needs to be to compete in this new world. So, for instance, for those of us who are in the United States today, uh, several generations ago, we embarked on a nation building project at a time when there was a strong threat of fascism. Authoritarianism was in the air. People felt an incredible economic insecurity. Um, this kind of sense that democratic institutions were under pressure reached a level that is hard for many of us to appreciate today, although it's like what we appreciate today. And the way that the United States salvaged democracy and maintained capitalism in the face of other kinds of challenges was by making this massive public investment in what we now call public goods. And oftentimes when we think about this project, it's is about the you know production of Social Security and expansion of health insurance and unemployment insurance. But there are also extraordinary physical spaces that we built and started building in this New Deal period when the United States built out, well, libraries, for instance, but also parks and playgrounds and schools and housing complexes and performance spaces and national parks, things that really remade the kind of physical fabric of the country. And I fear that what's happened in the last several decades is that we have really failed collectively to invest in what I call social infrastructure. And when I say social infrastructure, I don't mean it as a metaphor, and I don't mean it kind of institutionally. When I say social infrastructure, what I'm referring to are the physical places that shape our capacity to interact. So social infrastructure, I mean the physical places and organizations that have a physical plant that shape our capacity to interact. And the thesis that's guided much of my work over the last decade is that when we invest in social infrastructure, when we design it well, when we build it well, when we program it well, and when we maintain it well, we get all kinds of returns to our collective life. But also that when we fail to invest in social infrastructure, if we don't have a concept for it, if we don't recognize its benefits, if we treat it like a luxury good, the kind of thing that we fund at the end of the budgeting cycle after we've taken care of the things that are our priorities, then the social infrastructure starts to fall apart. And my diagnosis of the situation in many parts of the world now is that our neglect of the physical social infrastructure has come at the very time that uh, the tech industry has made these investments in our screen worlds. And so it's a kind of losing proposition. And all of you will be familiar with the kind of cultural complaint that we issue so often today about why young people don't hang out with each other and play in physical space, why they always seem so connected to their devices and interested in what's happening on social media, but less seem to have been developing less skill at being with each other in real time. I'm not sure that exactly how much skill they've lost at hanging out in person, but I can say with certainty that we have collectively failed to build a world that is equally compelling, that can compete with what's happening on screen. This is all pre-AI. And so I guess where I wanted us to start our conversation today is by acknowledging the incredible rise, the stratospheric rise, and extraordinary allure of AI for so many people in so many parts of life. It's relatively new as a consumer-friendly part of our world, and already its popularity is nearly ubiquitous. Mona, I wouldn't go quite as far as you did, which is I think you said that we could hardly have an interaction that's free of AI. I hope that's not true for most of us. I try to do that, but it's no doubt the case that many of the things, for instance, that we might have once gone to a library or a librarian for, are now at our fingertips, and that if our approach to the public library system is, well, it's not clear what kind of good it produces for societies anymore because AI can take its place, that there's tremendous risk that we will lose the kind of information that we get face to face in our interactions with librarians who have some magical skills and powers that I think Shauntee and Peter might discuss later. But also, we run the risk of uh, gutting or just neglecting to their total detriment the physical libraries that have become such essential social infrastructure in all variety of places around the world today. And my book is called Palaces for the People as a direct reference to the library because it's my claim in the book that if you wanted to find a physical place that was a symbol and also an engine of all the virtues of an open society and a democratic society and a society that was dedicated to decency and generosity and to promoting belonging, that you could hardly do better than the public library. Um, and so I'm going to leave it to Shauntee and Peter to talk a little bit more about how AI has penetrated into the library and what the specific kinds of challenges libraries face as they integrate both these systems and also people who are accustomed to being on the systems and being shaped by the systems. They'll have a lot more to say about that than I will be. But where I would like us to return when we reconvene for conversation is to this question about what happens to our material world as we find ourselves being pulled even more deeply into a digital world that's spending even more money and hiring even more talent to keep us in its orbit. So thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Eric, for this diagnostic and these observations. Much appreciated, and thank you for introducing us to the notion of social infrastructure, which is extremely um, relevant and important. Shauntee, I think he teed you right off. You're muted, unfortunately.
He
There we
did.
go.
That's what I was saying. I was actually going to my share to share my slides, but now it's saying no access. So, I mean, slides are not necessarily needed. So I can have a conversation just like Eric, since it's blocked for some reason.
Why don't you start and Maddie and Amy will look at it in the
Okay,
meantime.
you got it. Thank you, Eric. That was definitely a great segue. What I wanted to talk about was the idea of what if AI is forcing us to completely redefine what it means for access. And I'm going to specifically focus on youth, um, because I think you do bring up a lot of great questions that many of us in the profession are thinking about answering. So I'll just start off by saying that for years, libraries have been that public institution that provides access to resources for everyone. Again, I'm focusing on young people. So regardless of your income, family background, reading level, neighborhood, the public library is supposed to be this welcoming space for everyone to come in, get access, and learn. And so for many of us, we are starting to think about, is AI disrupting that promise? And this is not a new question for us. I mean, this question has come when the internet was a new thing and when Google and all of these search engines were coming out, and everyone has, information in the palm of their hands with their smartphones. The question has been, well, is librarians needed? And of course, I'm biased, but I'm going to yell out from the mountaintop, of course we are. Um, Not just, again, for public libraries to fill the digital divide or, like you pointed out, being that community center for everyone, but also combating fake news, which has been a real problem. Had a cute picture of a child that I wanted you to see. And in that picture, it's showing a child picking books up off the shelves. And the idea of a child before they can even read or write, being able to just whisper in their iPad a question and getting a response quicker than they could go to that bookshelf. Um, it really helps us think about what does that mean for us as librarians. especially when we're working with kids. But this is for everyone. So I think about it on all aspects, even whether it's for collections or for programs. So many librarians will know we have this lovely program where kids will read to a dog so that they can feel confident about reading. But now with the use of AI and these different tools, a child can read using their iPads, and at the end, the parent as well as them, they could see how many words they might have got wrong, be able to really think about if they understood what they read. There's good use around that. And thinking about what you were stating about kids playing video games. I have a 12-year-old, definitely loves to play video games. He'll play the video games. He'll have his friends on speaker or the headsets. They're having conversations. But I remember bringing gaming into the library, even though I started in the library at 2. So, but I remember kids saying it's much more fun playing the video games in the library because again, they're together. So that idea of community is very much different based off of generations. Because I'm like, what is this? But anyway, thinking about AI is no longer just the supplement to library access. It is a parallel universe for us around information, learning, and literacy support. And so, how do we think about what does the library become now that we're thinking about AI? This is not something new, but us being able to really forge ahead with it. And I know the American Library Association is developing a task force around AI because there's no parameters around this. I wanted to highlight another library expert in the field, Nick Tanzi. He published an article on building a future-ready generation, how libraries can support youth in the age of AI. And I'm going to minimize my screen so I can at least read a quote from the digital promise that he pointed out in the article. And I just like the way it nicely succincts many thoughts around it. And so thinking about what is the library's obligation, the public library's obligation, they wrote the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, evaluate, and use AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. Like it's not going anywhere. It's here. We don't open up Pandora's box. It's a thing. And I would say, just in simple terms, that the public library needs to be that public space, ensuring that youth can learn AI safely, can be creative with it, and think about it in an equitable lens, because we know for some, AI can teach and empower, and for others, it can be misleading and excluding. So we know that specifically for underrepresented and marginalized groups, there's known bias in the algorithms. But also just thinking about the vulnerable population. And I would say young people fit into that group. We know scammers are using AI all the time, acting like they're the same age as them, everything. And so the idea of the libraries, we were number one, and I believe we still are, a trusted institution for the public. We're free. And at the core, we're still human-centered. And I think that still matters. I think what we must think about to support our public, specifically students and the adults in their lives is AI literacy, so that they're just not accessing AI, but knowing what they're accessing and what does that mean. Um, Let me go because I wanted to frame because I could just ramble. So I want to be really succinct in what I want to speak about. Oh, another resource that I wanted to showcase is there's the website AI4K12.org. And I wanted to bring this one up because there is an article that's on there. It's called Envisioning AI for K through 12. What should every child know about AI? And I I use it. But the big idea that sticks out for me is the big idea number 5, because it's really for, I would say, schools. It's for schools. But big idea number 5 is around AI applications can impact society on both a positive and negative way. And in a nutshell, students should be able to identify ways that AI is contributing to their lives. The societal impacts of AI involve 2 kinds of questions. What applications should AI be used for? And there's a growing interest in AI for social good. I think us being able to have these conversations with our youth specifically because they're going to grow up and be the next generation of voters and everything else. I think we need to start having these conversations now. And I think we also need to also think about how, again, if I'm thinking about AI and how it is going to impact how youth gain access, I want us to also go back to thinking about if AI is rewriting how young people are getting access and learning, us as the public library being able to be there to support and teach them on how to ask the better questions. And I'll leave it right there.
Thank you so much, Shauntee. So much appreciated. Thank you for reminding us of the role of the public in a trusted space. And I have many follow-up questions, but I will pass it on to Peter first before we start our panel discussion. And just a reminder for the audience, please start putting your questions into the Q&A box and we'll start folding those into the conversation. Peter, over to you.
Awesome. All right. I think I'm going to be able to share mine because I put a lot of work into these beautiful slides, and if we don't share them, I'm going to be so sad. All right. But also, I'm going to try real hard to stick to that 8 to 10 minutes. Okay. So my premise that I'm starting with is that AI challenges us to be better people and also better librarians. When it comes to AI, we know a lot. We know that there are problems with it. We know that it has problems with climate. There's copyright problems, transparency problems, privacy problems, psychosocial problems, labor problems. There are many problems. And we know about them. The folks in this room and the folks probably in the audience, we know about them. We talk about them a lot. We read about them a lot. We know. We also know, moving from AI specifically to more generally algorithms, we know that what we see, hear, read, and know, and therefore kind of like what we decide to do, is driven by algorithms. So search algorithms shape our perception of truth or facts and what we find when we go looking for them. Advertising kind of impacts what we spend money on or tries to shape our decision making. Social media algorithms consume and try to monetize our time. And like in the real world, even algorithms behind our camera lenses, they dictate not just our view of the world, but also our memory. And not just of the world, but of ourselves. And so how are these connected? Well, when it comes to AI, I think that we can take these 2 things and smush them together. And it comes there's 3 things kind of that I want to highlight. So what we know about AI shapes our perceptions of it and our behaviors toward it. Algorithms, in turn, shape what we know. And the individual shapes the algorithm through our behaviors and the proxies that these algorithms create of us to use to try and understand us. And while those proxies are not perfect representations of us, like a funhouse mirror is still a mirror, right? So there's still an element of us that's shining back on us. And this isn't just a one, like it's cyclical, right? So all of these things feed into each other. And so I think it's fair to say that algorithms shape when, how, and what we think about AI, like it or not. And I think it's important to acknowledge this. And our ideas about AI are not perfect and unbiased views. And that's just us, which brings me to my next point. We is not everyone. Uh, it's true. And just as an aside, I love this picture. So if you ever need like images for your slideshows talking about AI, I highly recommend going to betterimagesofai.org. It's all openly licensed. Great resources. Very good art. And there's alt text. So anyhow, so on this idea that we or I is not the same as everyone, if we can keep that in mind as we think about AI and how we might co-opt it, it gives us an opportunity to be challenged. How we make that challenge something positive, in my mind, comes down to self-reflection, kind of on two main points. One is, when I think of or imagine others who choose to use generative AI tools, am I doing so fairly? And when I reflect on how I talk and act about AI, how does that influence others? And in turn, how does that influence me? Am I being fair to myself? Like, these are not easy questions. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're worth asking. So let's talk about librarianship, or as I like to call it, the agony and the ecstasy of the reference desk. The thing about working at the reference desk or in any public facing role at a public library is that you will meet everyone. And very quickly, you will discover just how true the statement that we is not the same as everyone is. So I used to be a public librarian. And when I was doing that, here's some of the folks I met. So there was the woman who came in all the time, and she would ask me every time that she saw me, she would ask me for a film recommendation. And even though no matter what I told her, her response was always like, "Oh, Peter, you're cute, but you need culture." There was the guy who yelled at me and like threatened me for 15 minutes after I offered him headphones, and who an hour later I sprinted to with a naloxone kit because he was passed out and unresponsive in front of our library. And it was like a cold February night here in Canada and British Columbia. And then there was like the haggard college student I caught vaping in the stairwell during finals week who like visibly crumpled when my first like gut reaction on seeing him was like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" Maybe a little bit louder than was strictly necessary. But like, this is just a very small sample, and I had to pare down some of the samples that I came up with of just how different everyone is. And so like truly, I, is not the same as everyone. And this is important when we try to imagine how or why we do anything, but also how or why anyone does anything with AI. I dare say that a lot of people are using AI because capitalism and scarcity, and people are struggling every day just to get by. It's hard. It's a tiring time. Things are exhausting and unprecedented, and I would love some precedented, non-exhausting times, but that's not what we have, right? And like people got to eat. And so like I don't agree with everyone, and I certainly don't like everyone, but at the end of the day, I picked a profession for my life and a direction for my life where I choose to be in service to others. And I do like that. And so while I don't use AI tools in the same ways or to the same extent as other people do, I do want to make sure that I can still show up for them when they need it. And part of being able to do that is understanding AI and understanding how other people are thinking about it and using it themselves. So I just want to take a second to talk about how we're talking about AI, the discourse, as they say, because we aren't always very generous with how we're talking about AI usage, especially like how or why students are using it, or teachers, or sad or lonely people, or new parents. But really, people have reasons. So like students are turning to AI because it's really hard right now to balance the extreme cost of living, taking on enough extracurricular activities so that maybe you get into the college you want, and like confronting a horrifying job market on graduation. AI offers something for them for this. Educators turn to AI because their pay sucks. Class sizes are absurd and getting larger, and good luck for adjuncts that someday they get something permanent. And like there just aren't enough hours in the day for every little aspect of academia and all of the committees. And like sad and lonely people use AI because it's hard to meet people and to find meaningful companionship and relationship when everybody is exhausted and everything costs money and your culture places an unhealthy emphasis on self-reliance. And so like while AI is not a perfect solution for a lot of things, like it can be good enough, and good enough is contextual. And when things are hard, the bar for good enough is a lot lower. So it makes sense that we see folks using AI. So what do? What am I saying? What is the way forward? What do I want people to do with this? First, I should clarify that I'm not saying that AI and the companies that make it are beyond reproach or critiquing, because they're super not. I'm also not saying that we should all just start using AI with reckless abandon, because nothing really matters anyhow and all hope is lost. I have a 3-year-old, in case you couldn't tell from the art, which might also be why I'm so tired all the time. And I know that everything I do is modeling behavior for him. And so I try to set a good example with what I do. But that's also the case for grown-ups. Like we see what the people in our lives do, and if we like them, we imitate them. It's just how it goes. What I am saying is we should be generous. When someone asks me a question, I assume that one, it's from a place of need, and two, they are a much better expert in their life than I am. These assumptions help me do better reference interviews by giving the other person more space. And if you're not familiar with what a reference interview is, it's a technique that librarians use to get to the heart of somebody's question. It's a whole thing, and I recommend people looking it up because it's fascinating. It's active listening and then some. But a good reference interview can mean that a patron who comes in looking for like the last season of Friends on DVD ends up leaving registered for a weekly ESL conversation circle, a sense of belonging in a new community, and maybe actual real friends. And then the last thing I am saying is we should consider approaching AI from the lens of harm reduction. We can't control what our patrons do, but we can help them better understand all of their options. And we can gently nudge them toward making better decisions. So let's talk about harm reduction. We all care about outcomes, I think, but I think that also sometimes it's hard to reconcile what has to be done to achieve better outcomes with what we feel is fundamentally good or bad. We see this tension in play when when we compare abstinence only or just say no approaches to ones that focus on harm or risk reduction. I don't know about the circles y'all are in, but I've seen a lot of the discourse, again, air quotes, around AI being some variant of just say no. And while the framing is always a little bit different, the focus usually covers a particular problem, highlights an example of this problem, like rocks on a pizza or whatever Google did back when Gemini first came out, and then kind of goes straight into like disbelief that anyone would use these tools. And there's usually some level of disdain or like condescension toward people who use AI. And like even this morning when I woke up, one of the algorithms served me up a clip from The Daily Show where Ronnie Chang is walking around a college campus asking students, and I'm paraphrasing, why they're so dumb that they're using ChatGPT. And like, I get it. I'm not saying The Daily Show shouldn't be funny, but also it's as much a comedy show as it is a cultural critique. And in this case, I think that perhaps unintentionally, it does a really good job of satirizing in both directions. Historically, though, when we look at other instances where just say no is the approach taken, so for example, DARE or drug abuse resistance education, which all of my millennial American friends probably experienced in some form, or even abstinence only sex ed, like the outcomes of those are not great and oftentimes are non-existent. I don't know for sure if that's also the case with AI refusal or AI abstinence only approaches, because we haven't really seen studies on that yet. But I do know that generally When we shame people about things that are considered problematic, we run the risk of preventing healthy conversations from starting and of pushing healthy, risky behaviors or pushing risky behaviors into places we no longer have eyes on. And that I think is really dangerous. Um, I can't help but think about Adam Rain and Sewell Setzer, two teenage boys who spent a lot of time with large language model powered chatbots and who killed themselves this year. And from what I've read about their lives and their experiences, they would they were not served by shame and marginalization, and they would not have been served by more of that. Um, so, what would AI harm reduction look like? I think it depends. It really depends on the harm that we're trying to reduce. But here's some things that come to mind for that. Above everything, I think we need to keep in mind this idea of humans in the loop. So, you know, whenever we have AI, we need to have a person there keeping an eye on it and checking what it gives us. That could be if you have it like give you a lesson plan, check that for factuality. Like if you have it ask you for anything, if you're having it give you code, have someone check that. Also, we need to get away from frictionless interactions with AI and like a lot of electronic systems. Like I hate that ChatGPT now asks a follow-up question with every response it gives because it's just trying to keep you going, right? And I hate that LLMs are baked into everything these days. It seems like even in libraries, like library vendors are putting it into all of the software that they provide us. And I hate that because I worry that it's making these tools and these technologies invisible to us. Related, we need to make AI Brechtian again. So for you history theater folks, you know what I'm talking about. For everyone else, we need to make sure that people know they're interacting with AI systems. We need it to be obvious. And when it starts to become unobvious, like I want these systems to grab me by the shoulders and shake me and scream at me in binary, because like I don't want me to think that this is normal in another person. We can't expect power users to go cold turkey, but we should practice judicious use and encourage others to do the same. AI has its uses, and those uses have costs, financial, social, etc. And then finally, like sticking with this drug use parallel, like maybe we need supervised interaction sites. This would be our schools, our universities, our libraries, places where people can have facilitated interactions and learn from them and grow from them and try things out in safe ways. And there's a cost. There's always a cost, but there's also uses, and I think we can't ignore those. But we do have to ask ourselves every single time, is my use worth the cost? It's more grappling, and gosh, I love it because I think we need to, even when we're tired. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter, and thanks, Eric and Shauntee, for your contributions. We already have a bunch of terrific questions from the audience. Dear audience, keep going. We'll get to them. So I'm just gonna keep it to one question from me to sort of begin our dialogue. So, Eric, you reminded us of the sort of trade-off or the loss of physical, of social connection because physical space has been sort of neglected as a design project for society or as a societal project. And Shauntee, you spoke about trust and you asked, vis-a-vis AI, what has the library become? What should it become? And Peter, you spoke about the human in the loop and, asking us to routinely question what is the cost of using AI? And so across these points, and I'm, obviously simplifying some of the things, the wonderful things you've said. My question for all of you is, where does this put the librarian? Because the educator in me and the professor in me sort of hears there is so much more we must do, and it is on the shoulders of educators to sort of lead the way, have literacy around technology use, have literacy around the importance of social connection, right? I just made my classroom low tech and no tech, for example. And there seems to be an expectation around guiding youth, perhaps also guiding older generations through this new world of AI. And so Eric, Shauntee, and Peter, maybe we can go with the comment in this order. Where do you see the librarian, the role of the librarian today in the sort of intersection between the public role of libraries and artificial intelligence as like a social sorting mechanism almost, Eric?
Well, why don't we have Peter and Shante take that first? I think they both actually addressed it somewhat in their remarks. I feel like the least qualified person here to talk about what librarians could and should be doing. But I'd be happy to learn and then comment a little bit later.
Shauntee, what do you think?
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. I would say that the librarians, we have an interesting place in this whole system. So whether we're thinking about how we are going to digitize and make our information more open, I think in the past we like to point our public to the databases that we spend a lot of money on because we know the accuracy of the information. But I think when we're in libraries that have specific archives, so like here in DC, we have the People's Archives, being able to digitize it so that when people are looking up something, they're not just getting anything that's made up in AI, but we're putting out accurate information that we know we have put into the system accurately for the public to use. So I'll just start off there, but there's a lot we can do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, libraries, it's a traditional role that we're filling, right? Like information seeking behavior. That's our jam. That's our bread and butter. It's what we study in grad school. And I think we can stick with that. We also, I think, owe it to our patrons and our communities to the extent possible, try and understand these technologies. Recognizing that we won't have all of the answers and recognizing like there's a level of technical expertise that we don't have the time to get, right? But we can try. And when we know that we don't know, like we can flip back into librarian mode and find the resources that can help explain. There's a nonprofit in Germany that's doing like a roadshow of AI technology in public libraries, and they're coming out to my local public library in New Westminster. And the public library is facilitating, they're providing the space and some of the marketing, and that's it. And I think that's great. They're doing the vetting, but I think that's really great to recognize what your limits are and staying within them. So that's one thing.
Thank you.
I don't know if Eric's going to jump in, but another example that stuck out to me was when Wikipedia was a thing. It's still a thing, but I remember teachers saying, "Don't you dare use Wikipedia." But then as we realized that that's a starting off point for students, and then being able for them to use their critical thinking skills to see and assess what is being shared and doing the extra work to verify the information.
I mean, I guess I'd just add one more thing, which is that the ambition of avoiding AI altogether and thinking of it as a scourge, I think, is uh, self-defeating insofar as AI is just embedded into all kinds of things, including our ordinary searches, uh, so that we can't really avoid it. And in a way, a librarian has to embrace the challenge of teaching people to learn and to think independently in a moment where AI is just going to be part of our information environment and in ways that can be difficult for us to discern. But I also think a librarian is a human being who serves as you know, an embodied reminder of how to engage the world uh, in ways that you won't necessarily see modeled if you just have your nose in the screen. And the librarian can be a connector and sometimes in the same way that, as Shauntee said, her 12-year-old enjoys playing video games, at the library more than at home, people might discover that their, search for knowledge.
Sorry.
Peter's machine was not happy about what I was just saying. It's clearly Peter's got, yeah, the AI in Peter's machine was like, that's dangerous.
Sorry,
Uh,
emergency test system.
I hope it's only a test. Um, but it might be that, people who come to the library and ask the librarian, questions about AI will find that using it with other people, trying to solve problems with other people adds some dimension to their experience. So again, this is not my, what librarians should do is not my area of expertise. But I guess I would look for my librarian, for my children, and for my community to not put their head in the sand, to not admonish us for our curiosity, but to try to think with us about what it means to solve problems and seek out knowledge, given what the information environment looks like.
Thank you for that. And I will, also add that especially when it comes to youth, it just always strikes me, at least in interaction with my students, how much expertise there already is around technology in that generation. I mean, it's quite incredible how they think about technology and use technology in ways that I, for example, had never thought of. I'm going to pivot towards audience questions because we have a bunch of wonderful ones. Shauntee, we have a question from Mackenzie Clark, and they're asking, what programs do you think would be useful and feasible for libraries to implement in order to promote digital literacy for youth as well as adults?
Um, I will point out one that was a hit, and I will say when the library was first getting laptops checked out, boy, am I aging myself. Um, for teens, we called it Teen Tech Time. And so it really allowed teens to surf the web, but and play games and do research for their homework. But it also allowed us as librarians, because it was in this space, when they were doing research for something, seeing the websites they were going to, and instilling that the W's of the website, the five W's of that website that they were looking at. And again, pointing them to the databases that they had access to, but again, just being able to use it as a teaching mechanism for teens to think about what they're looking at on the website, and how credible that information is. And you could do that for all ages.
Thank you for that very specific and concrete example. Much appreciated, Shante. Peter, I have a question for you. And I think that really actually nicely builds on what Shante just said in the question we just had before. What do we do if patrons are not interested in learning how to use AI ethically and are just interested in, let's say, playing around with it? Anything about AI scams or AI problems or digital citizenship doesn't get attendees, but how to use ChatGPT does get a crowd. So how do we balance public
Yeah.
interest with what we, and again, I'm coming back to the we, right? Who's included in
Yeah.
the we, what we think is important. Can you reflect on that?
Yeah. So part of it, and one of the things I love most about doing public library stuff is workshops. Like you kind of get to control what's in the curriculum, right? And so you can call it whatever you want. If you know that people are showing up to a workshop called how to use like how to use ChatGPT, and they're not showing up to, how to be a better digital citizen, then like change the name to how to use ChatGPT and teach people there how to use a better digital citizen. Because like they're not unrelated concepts, right? And I think we should be having those. It would be great if we could scaffold those perfectly. Like, shout out to any of the instructional designers in the audience. It would be great if we had the capacity to do that. And I think we could, there's opportunities to work with, like, UVA has a whole faculty of instructional designers that are doing research on how to use AI to teach better. But like we can make those changes, and we can get help to do that. Whether they like it or not, they're gonna come away learning something. But for like those situations where people are like trying to use these things to scam people, like that's a hard stop. I'm sorry, but like that they're not going to do that in the library. And if they try and if we find out, like that's a swift exit. We as institutions have usage policies, and like broadly, we go to great lengths not to restrict or control what people are doing with our systems. Um, but like breaking the law is kind of a hard one. And like if someone asks me, hey, how do I want to make this fake video? Like I'm not going to get someone to like prompt engineer what they're asking me to help them do in prompt engineering ChatGPT to break that. Like it's very meta, but like I can recognize if that starts to happen. And unlike ChatGPT, I can say, no, good luck. Go do something else. Um, but like being able to do that requires having a little bit of expertise and a little bit of experience. Yeah.
Right, which sort of loops a little bit back to like the expanded role of the librarian or the educator, right? In sort of the broadest sense. Eric, one for you. Can AI actually be in support of social infrastructure in your sense? Can it be supportive of the library as a crucial social infrastructure?
So you broke up a little bit on my end, but I think the question was, can AI help to support the idea that libraries are social infrastructure? Is that the question?
That is correct.
I mean, sh sure. One could ask AI you could ask ChatGPT about social infrastructure and how it matters, and ChatGPT could issue a beautiful essay about why we need physical space, and why we need connections in physical space. Um, like I said in the beginning, I don't think these forces are necessarily in conflict. It's probably not sustainable for them to be in conflict. Um, my concern will be that I talk about the we, and we kind of have neglected to keep up our physical space to invest in social infrastructure. Of course, I'm presuming that the hundred or so of us who are on this call today are not the ones who are actually setting the budget for our federal government or our local government. I mean we in the kind of democratic sense of the we. And my concern is that as the zeitgeist shifts and more of us come to embrace AI, if we do, as this, force that can deliver, so much of what we want, including companionship, right? Including advice on what books to read if we are a 16-year-old who is interested in X, Y, and Z, or an 81-year-old who's interested in A, B, and C. As we turn to AI for the things that we used to turn to each other for, should we do that, it runs the risk of undermining support, our kind of democratic support for libraries as institutions, and for social infrastructure in other areas of our lives as well. And so, I, while I don't think this conflict is necessary, when I hear the advocates of AI and their agents in government who are making big decisions in order to kind of win the AI war, when I hear them talk about their visions for the future, it seems to be a vision that's fairly hostile to the kind of social infrastructure that I envision and champion. It seems also to be quite hostile to the climate, right? Because the notion is if we establish any regulations that constrain the capacity of AI developers to do their thing, we'll lose the AI war, and we will ultimately play a backseat to China in geopolitics. And so let's not have that conversation about energy and emissions, and how we pull this off. And so if our political priorities uh, keep the development and growth of AI above all of these other considerations, then I fear what that means for the physical world, including libraries, but other kinds of social infrastructure as well. And there, I say all this because I think it's our responsibility as citizens to have some a stronger voice in these debates, and to levy our concerns, when we can, and I fear that this kind of cultural fascination with AI has kept us from doing that so far. So it is one thing for us to, uh, turn away from AI altogether. It's one thing for librarians to say, just say no, all AI is evil. I think that's a losing move. But I guess what I'm saying is, we need to be aware of all the things that AI is doing in the world, can do for us. What are its virtues? Why is there real excitement about it? But also to try to make sure that we shape it so that the AI we come up with is one that promotes our well-being, and our collective well-being, not just the well-being of a fairly small number of people. And
Mhm.
I think at the moment we have every reason to believe it's the latter, that's shaping out. And so we need more conversations like this in more places.
And in that sense, I hear that the library could actually be a really important place to have deliberation around futures that we want and how we want AI to be in them in a way.
Yeah, I think we need to have some common civic space where people can come together and shape ideas about the world that they want to make. And the library has served as that kind of place for many communities for a long time. And despite all the things we hear about the library wars around book banning and attacks on librarians and library budgets, those are real things and they're real threats, but at the end of the day, it's a small minority of libraries that are dealing with those situations. I think overwhelmingly it's the case that communities appreciate their libraries, and libraries have always had to deal with various challenges. And trust me, I'm not trying to understates what a real threat the book banning is, and the organized attacks on library systems and librarians are. Those things are real and they're scary and they concern me. Um, but it remains the case that the library has real support in most of the communities where it operates, and I think it can continue to be a kind of vital civic space. But there are others as well. And I think we don't want to surrender civic space to the digital domain.
Mhm.
Uh, and I could easily see a universe in which AI becomes a far more prominent agent in our civic and political conversations for the way that its algorithms deliver information to us, shape the way we learn, formally and informally, shape our access to news and information. A lot of the original producers of information that we have had are under threat. I think, years ago, I wrote this book about the demise of local journalism. And I think that story remains salient, as we just have less and less capacity to get uh, crafted journalism done by independent thinkers that reports on the things happening in the communities where we live. And one consequence of that is that our politics have become more nationalized. We're more keyed into what national parties and national pundits and national cable outlets and um, other major players in the media environment have to say, and I think that makes us in some way a little more vulnerable at the local level. So, you know, I guess what I'm saying is it's not just the AI, it's also the internet, but the public sphere of 2025 is a very different one than the public sphere of 2000 or 1975, and none of them were perfect public spheres. We don't have to kind of romanticize some previous day when everything was perfect, but we have a unique set of challenges that we need to do a better job making sense of.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you
I
for
think
that.
really quickly,
Shauntee, go. Yes, go ahead.
um, I hear you for the libraries to be that civic space. I totally agree. But when it comes to the funding and the federal funding, it does make a big difference in how we do that work. And so when we're thinking about IMLS being cut, a lot of our even smaller rural libraries, they're not able to even fully staff a library because of these cuts. And when we're thinking about the cuts to the Department of Education, many of our schools, they do not have a certified school librarian. And so when we're thinking about AI, and I think Peter, you brought this up, is that it's filling a void, and the void is because we're not supporting people learning how to read. We're in a reading crisis, unfortunately, where people are not read at a grade level. Many of our adults are reading below an eighth grade student, and being able to read and comprehend what they're reading. This is a big problem. This is where AI is filling that void. But we need to be able to support our libraries, our librarians, certified school libraries, public libraries, because without that, and because of all of these cuts, I don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately. That perpetuates the problem that we're in.
Peter, do you want to respond to that? And then I have one more question for everybody.
Preach. That's like the IMLS being dismantled has been heartbreaking, and watching the same thing happen with the Department of Education kills me. And like trying, because it's a lot. It's a lot to ask. But like libraries do exist ideally in this place to fill this gap and to facilitate these conversations. Like that's the whole thing of library design, is how do you design a library to be a space for people? And it's great discussions to have, but without the money, it's real hard. So yeah, on that note.
All right. So, I would love to hear from each of you what your dream scenario of the future is, of the library. What physical place, what social space, what technology or epistemic technology can the library and you wish the library will be in a future that is AI mediated? Eric.
Well, I'm going to be very parochial and specific. I live in New York City, and we have a new mayor you might have heard about coming in January. And he's a democratic socialist, and he has committed to injecting, public investments into a bunch of crucial institutions. And I would really love to see this new mayor supercharge our extraordinary uh, city system of branch libraries to make sure that they are updated, to make sure that they're accessible to everyone. Updated means like the HVAC should work better. The bathrooms should be more reliable. They should all have wireless mesh networks so that if the internet goes down, people can still communicate. They should be, retrofitted so that those that have sufficient space could serve meals during crises. They should be their technology should be updated, and their programming uh, should should be developed so that they're more compelling for even more people than they are right now, and they're already quite popular. But I think that New York City has really failed to take advantage of this built infrastructure that is there. It's been developed originally, but it's not been maintained and programmed and staffed in ways that it needs to be. And I think New York City's local library system could become a model for what cities and communities around the country could do. And I don't think that Mamdani's attention is on that issue right now, but I'm going to make it my job to push him to do that.
Thank you, Eric. We'll be watching that.
Check in
Shauntee,
later.
check in later. Shauntee, what do you wish the future of libraries looks like in the world that is AI mediated?
Oh boy, that's such a big question, and I have such a long wish list, but I'll try to keep it concise. I wish that every school has a certified school librarian. I wish that every public library has a library for each age range, so children, teen, and adult. I wish that librarians, as well as teachers, got their just pay. like they get paid a livable wage. I would love to see every library to have a special space for each age group so that teens and older adults are competing for the library in the afternoon. And I would love for the library to have money to be able to digitize their collections and continue to have these technologies that they could check out to the community. And I'll keep it at that.
Thank you for that. I love that. It's a very concrete and specific list. Maybe, have Eric talk to Mundani about this. Peter.
Yeah, I would love to see libraries. So before technical side, like I want every library to have a Michael Threets. Every library could go to have Michael Threets. And if you don't know him, just find the happiest librarian on the internet and you'll see him. That's not his username. I mean, he has a username. I don't know what it is, but he embodies. So I have a Mr. Rogers tattoo, and like he is everything that I care about, and it's so great to see him do that. Of just if every library had a single person who just cared so much about their community, that would be amazing. And that's hard right now because all the things Shauntee said, like we don't get. You don't become a librarian for the money, for example, and certainly not for the working hours. Um, so that would be a good step. But specifically for AI, I would love to see a future where libraries can exist as that space where people can do that, like testing things safely. Like the library hosts the model that you're playing with, and your privacy is protected and not sold off. The library has a person that will help you design your own tools without having to shill out money. The library advocates for you. And from a point of view of like technologically informed and can support the things that you want to try and do. Like just looking at AI, I think that would be things I would like to see, and I think they're doable. I'm trying to figure that out. But if you want to work with me on that, let me know. But I think it's doable. I just don't know what the timeline is for that.
Thank you for that. So we hear things are concrete and they are doable. And I think that is a wonderful message to take into the new year because this was the last Co-opting AI show for 2025. A massive, massive thanks to Eric Klinenberg, Shauntee Burns-Simpson, and Peter Musser. Thank you so much for your time today. Folks, these people are online. They're doing wonderful work. Please read the work, engage with them. Thank you, wonderful audience, for your questions. You were extremely engaged, and we so appreciate you. Please be back in the new year, 26, on February 11th. We will be talking about kids. So we will be picking up the youth theme here, and we will be hosting Sonia Livingston and Ashley Wade, and we're very, very excited about that. Other themes in the spring programming include therapy, insurance, and archives. So please come back. Thank you so much, everybody. Shauntee, Peter, Eric, it was great. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. Take care and have a good Thanksgiving and rest of the year. Thank you so much.
Thanks.